to our episode of the Buffalove podcast. We are so happy to have all of y'all with us today. Today we'll be addressing the topic of friendships, which is certainly a topic that is relatable to all of us. In a while, we'll actually be interviewing Dr. Vivien, but first, let's touch a bit on some research articles first. You want to take it away, Kanis?
Yeah, sure. Okay. So firstly, in the Bulker article, which is talking about friendships, they wanted to find out if adolescents actually perceive peer propagation in their friends and unfamiliar peers differently, and whether if the change in stress level actually influence how they respond to their friends and acquaintances. So what was found was that adolescents actually reported more difficulty using avoidance and revenge when the peer instigator was their friend compared to an unfamiliar peer. They also feel worse about using avoidance and revenge as they think that a larger peer group will actually like them less. Also, when stress levels are considered, differences of whether it is a friend or unfamiliar peer might disappear. We also wanted to find out if there's any differences between girls and boys, and girl friendship tends to be more close and more emotional. Therefore, girls may be more affected in this situation. Furthermore, girls also have a stronger orientation towards relationship and they are more sensitive to impersonal stress. So Angel, what other relevant articles have you found that can help us in our research about friendship conflicts?
So, there is this Cook article that I have found. The purpose is to investigate if individuals' emotion, good or bad feelings, and physical stress signals sync up during stressful situations. The article also wants to find out if syncing up was stronger or weaker in good versus conflicted friendship. They further examine affective and physiological synchrony within friendship diets during late adolescence and factors that might strengthen or weaken association. So guess what factor predict how synchronized friends were?
I'm gonna guess, is it possible that it's positive affect or mood?
Not really, but that's a good guess. It's actually their level of cortisol, SAA, and their negative affect or mood. Positive affect or mood actually didn't predict synchrony. When one of them had a positive mood, the other had a negative mood. So what this means is that friends who are highly synchronized might actually struggle to de-escalate their arguments, which could be why highly synchronized friends also reported lower friendship quality.
Okay. That's interesting. Do you all ever have friendships like that where you both yap over each other too much and you get arguments that get out of control?
I guess I had experience of that too.
You, Kanis?
I mean, when my friends yap to me, I feel that there's actually a lot of common topics that we can talk about, and usually this is when we bond a lot over time, and that's also when we get to know more about each other, and that's when the friendship gets even closer than before.
That's interesting, that's good.
Oh wow, that's cool. Okay, actually we have a third article that I found as well that could actually add on to the two articles that you guys brought up, but I'm gonna hold off on that for just a bit because I think our very special guest is going to be very integral to the way we understand the research findings.
What shall we eat today for lunch?
Okay, let me see on Instagram, okay? Oh, they have this advertisement.
Oh my god, that's pineapple on pizza.
Pineapple should belong on pizza.
That is so disgusting. Pineapple should not belong on pizza.
Why? Oh my god.
Naughty.
It's good, like why?
No.
Do fights like this look a little too familiar to you? Have friendships ended because of a silly scuffle? Are you tired of relying on those automatic responses that only make things worse? There's got to be a better way to resolve your differences. Well, you're in luck. For only $4.99 a month, you can start today with Ready. Do you know that we argue more when we're too in sync with our friends? It's like fighting fire with fire. Ready is the automatic watch that tells you when you and your friends are too in sync, so you can know exactly when to step back and cool off before things get really bad. Are you ready for the best friendship of your life? Get ready today!
Ready is not a diagnostic tool and should be used with precaution. Ready is sold to only adults. All children must gain parental consent before starting to use Ready. Ready users must agree to the Inside Out company's terms and conditions and data privacy policy before purchasing Ready. Ready is a social supplement device. Ready is not a replacement for interpersonal therapy or social skills training. Ask your therapist if Ready is right for you. The Inside Out company is not liable for any damages caused by improper Ready use, as outlined in our terms of service. If you've slowed this down, this is a joke. We're not actually selling rebranded Xiaomi smartwatches. This is a bit. If anything, the last sentence I just said was the real disclaimer. Wow, this got meta. Anyway, back to the video. Sorry parents for the cringe.
Hello and welcome to to our interview segment for this Buffalove podcast episode. I am Shafiq, joined with Vivien, and I am here with our very special guest today, Dr. Vivien Yang. Dr. Yang is a registered educational and child psychologist with 2 decades of experience supporting the needs of our Singaporean youth with developmental differences. Since receiving her doctorate from UCL, she worked with the Singapore Ministry of Education Psychological Services branch, leaving in 2019 to found Bloom Child Psychology, which is a child and educational psychology clinic providing psychoeducational consultation, assessment and therapy services for our neurodivergent youth here in Singapore, where she has served as principal psychologist since. We are so honored and excited to get the chance to chat with you. For the past few months, our group has actually paid very close attention to the literature surrounding adolescent friendship dynamics, and we would love to hear your thoughts on what key concerns your practice has seen sprout up in such a vital and sensitive period of development. And we certainly hope to get more insight that we may share with our audience to inform how we may better support the needs of not only the youth but also more especially the neurodivergent youth here in Singapore. So welcome, Dr. Yang. How are you doing today?
Thank you. I'm doing very well. Good to see you as well as your group mates. Happy to be here.
We are very, very happy to and glad to see you too as well. And yeah, I guess to start, may we ask what inspired you to pursue child and educational psychology?
Okay, so I think that since I was a little kid, I've always loved 2 things, which is children and animals. So it was always going to be one of the 2. Actually, in my teens, I did explore vet clinics as well. I did, part-time jobs and so on. So I think it was always going to be one of these. I'll be that 6-year-old babysitting my 3-year-old cousin and having tons of kind of thing, Yeah, so I guess I ended up with children. I volunteered at the zoo for a while, so I was actually exploring the animal route for a little while. Yeah, but eventually I landed with kids, so here I am.
That's really, really wholesome to hear. I guess in a similar vein, actually, wait, do you mind if you share why? Was there anything about animals that made you were you just drawn more towards animals towards children, or did animals maybe
Oh gosh, okay. So I actually worked at a veterinary clinic. I think it was for about 6 months. And I think it really hit me about the reality, because loving animals is one thing, but the actual work of a vet is very, very different. Yeah. So I was looking at lots of sterilizations, putting animals down. So my house apartment at that time actually became a zoo, because I would be bringing home all these animals that was supposed to be put to sleep. Yeah, so instead of it, I had mice. I had so many mice, because a lot of times I think they were bought for science experiments and stuff. Yes, and then they all ended up at the pet clinic, and they were supposed to be guests lah. So I'll bring them home, and I really had a zoo home at that time, and my parents would constantly scold me and stuff. And then rabbits breed, right? So I think I started with 5 or 6. End up with so many, and I was giving rabbits away and stuff. Yeah, but I think it was the reality that hit me that I love animals, but I don't know if this is what I want to do with them day in day out. Yeah. So.
Right.
So actually you left the Ministry of Education to start Bloom Child Psychology. So just want to ask, is there anything that actually sparked your shift from the public sector to the private sector?
Okay, so I would say that it wasn't really an intentional shift. I think it was around 2018. I was really facing a lot of burnout at that time. My kid was still young, so I decided to kind of take a break. So I actually left in 2018, and I worked at the charity for a period of time as well. So I was just kind of taking a break, healing, thinking of doing something different. So that was where I kind of started, looking into the private sector and doing a bit of casework with children. And I think what I really valued about the private sector now is that we have a much closer touch points with children and families.
Right.
In the ministry, yes, we also had that, but I think there was far greater focus, rightly so, because it's MOE, right? There was far greater focus on schools, the school system, building the capacity of schools, very, very important work, building the capacity of schools, building the capacity of teachers, building that culture of inclusion and so on. So very much the focus was on a systems level kind of work. It was great, it's still really invaluable. But I guess shifting to the private sector now, I really enjoy that direct work with kids and families.
Right. So based on what we're hearing, that the idea of having a more direct connection with the people that you're working with and the population that you're working with and you're concerned about definitely would be like the main, I guess. Could you say that it's sort of like a gap in your service that maybe the shift had addressed because of it?
As in when I was in MOE, is it?
Yeah.
I'm not sure that it's a gap per se, because I think that's the core business law in MOE, that it's really about building the capacity of schools. So not that we never worked with parents, we did, but I think there was far greater focus on building school systems.
Right.
And I think it really prepared me for my current role as well, because knowing the schools, having worked with teachers, understanding their constraints, knowing what sort of strategies would work in a class of 30 to 40 kids, for example, in our local schools. It's very, very different from what works in a therapy session.
Right.
So it really gives you that very realistic perspective, right? That you don't just say, I think this will work, and then the teacher's like rolling their eyes, knowing that you have no idea what it means to be in a classroom. So I do feel like I don't see it as a gap, but I see it as something that I really enjoy currently, that I didn't get as much of, I would say, when I was in MPE.
Okay. Actually, just to get a feel for Bloom's clientele, what age ranges does your clinic typically serve, and how diverse is your caseload? I guess you could also compare it to MOE as well.
So actually we serve, I would say the majority of our clients would be between the age of 4, so the preschoolers, all the way up to like about 19 to 20, and these would be the students in higher ed, the uni students, poly students, and so on. So of course we do have clinical psychologists that work with young adults as well, but the vast majority is within 4 to 19, I would say. And in terms of, you asked about the caseload, the range of needs, so it's really a variety, because we've got educational psychologists, we've got clinical psychologists, we've got an educational therapist. So I would say we cover the range of like learning, behavioral, and emotional needs, including our neurodivergent youths, like you were talking about, our youths with ADHD, autism, dyslexia, and so on.
Right. So talking about the neurodivergent youth who are like in schools, right? So how does Bloom actually support them in collaboration with like local or like international schools?
Sure. Okay, so the thing is, the first step is always to gain parental consent, right? Because unlike MOE, where the cases come to us referred by the school, and then we kind of get parental consent to work with the child. In this case, we need to get parental consent to involve the school. That in itself can be a bit of a journey and process as well, because I think some parents do come in with a lot of fears and anxiety about what would be the implications. So for example, if the school were to know that my child potentially might have some issues, would that deprive them of certain leadership opportunities, EduSafe awards, and things like that? So parents can be quite concerned, especially for cases where the issues are more related to home, as in they're not hearing any complaints or any feedback from teachers. Child seem to be coping well at school, but having a lot of emotional meltdowns, for example, in the home setting. So I think that's usually the first step, where we try to navigate. We try to sort of help parents to make an informed decision as to what are the potential benefits of involving the school. We're quite careful also, because to be honest, it is quite a mixed landscape out there, and we also cannot guarantee how supportive and inclusive the school is going to be, how the school is going to that information, and so on. So normally, so we've got 2 categories: assessment cases and therapy cases, broadly speaking. So for assessment cases, we often try to at least get some feedback from the school, and we explain to parents that this really helps us to know, because when we see the child in the clinic, we might not be seeing, the full gamut of the behaviors and the challenges that they are facing at school. So it's often helpful to get the teachers' feedback and observation, and it really helps us to have a more holistic understanding of the child's strengths and needs, and also what sort of strategies might be feasible and implementable at the school level. So for assessments, minimally, we try to get the feedback from teachers. After the assessment is done, we also check in with parents whether they would like us to share the findings of the school. Now, obviously, that can be sensitive. Not all of them want things to be shared. They usually want to look at the report first, and then they will decide. But we're happy to do that, to share and to give some advice to teachers as well, how the child can be better supported. Therapy also, it's similar. I think that two ways. So one is to understand the child's needs from the school setting and what are some of the challenges that the teachers have observed, so that we can incorporate some of these into our therapy goals and the session as well. And if parents consent, we would also share some, so for example, we've been working with this child on the emotional regulation skills. We've been using this particular strategy. We're trying to get them to generalize that to the classroom setting.
Right.
It really helps when teachers are aware, and teachers can also prompt and speak the same language and so on.
Right. It seems like a very sort of very complex and very sensitive sort of and nuanced environment when you're working with a lot of these cases as well. Something that really struck me when you were responding was this idea that the biggest, I guess, concern for parents is almost like this shift between, well, what if my school already, my child is like considered to be of good standing within their school, like everything is, I guess, functional, or there's no real hiccups.
Right.
But then, well, what if, let's say, this gets out, and would it sort of is it accurate to say that their concern may be, what if it disrupts the sort of status quo that they've already had in that school environment, and like how we would actually manage that change, especially since we might get into this in a little bit, but a lot of at least in my time working with, I get cats out of the bag. I worked with Bloom for a while, but in my time working with Bloom, a lot of the time the need for consistency in your environments and a lot of really big transitions and shifts tend to be a sort of cause for concern. So I guess what I'm trying to like ask as well is, like, how much of your work also involves sort of educating the school on not only the way to handle certain things and be more sort of accommodating for these kids, but also on top of that, how you would sort of reach out to the students as well to make the environment as cohesive and as welcoming to these children as well.
Yeah. So in terms of working with the school on the school culture and environment, I would say that is still probably like my old job. That would be the main KPI of MOE,
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, because they would have access to school leadership, school management, MOE policies and so on. So very much for us when we speak with schools, I would say it's more commonly at the individual child level rather than talking about your school systems and culture, because they'll be like, hey, I'm just this child's teacher. Correct. So that's what I mean, is maybe a more personal level. So systemic work remains very important, but I think that's what MOE is doing, whereas for us is really advocating for this one child and what are the things that would help to support this child's progress and to be able to thrive in that school environment.
So I think this ties in really well with our main topic today. Like, children spend so much of the time in school, right? So they build and maintain their friendships like almost from scratch in their own bubble. So it seems to us that while friendships are very vital, right, to a child's development, children are almost expected to have like figured it out on their own, from choosing their peers or to resolving conflict, right? So as we think along the lines of supporting their growth and development, do you think there are any skills or habit we may help our children build that have shown to nurture stronger and healthier friendships?
Yes. And That's an excellent question. And the framing of your question in terms of skills is really important, because that's our belief lah, that that friendship skills is something that can be cultivated and learned over time. Now, of course, we're all different, I mean, even among you guys, I'm sure there will be like the social butterflies, the people that can talk to everyone and make friends with everyone. And then there will be the more introverted people among us and so on.
Right.
So we're really not trying to change people's personality and like, hey,
course,
you must be an X, you must have X number of friends. No lah. But I think what we're trying to do is to really equip them with some skills so that they are able to cope well in the environment, in the social environment that they have. So some of these skills are, I would say, okay, so when I think about the social skills groups that we run, right, I think we started with really focusing on like interaction, conversation, how you talk to people. But one of the key things that we've learned is that it starts from within the child. Before you can even talk about how you interact with others, right? How do you manage yourself, your own emotions? Emotional regulation is actually fundamental to social skills, because when we look at kids, right, friendships can be frustrating, right? Your friend, your parents can be very accommodating, but your friends may not want to talk about what you want to talk about. When you talk, a friend halfway may walk away. The friends may not want to play with whatever you want to play, or suddenly change the rules and things like that. So for kids who have trouble with frustration tolerance, and they flare up or they lose a game and they have a meltdown and things like that, those things can be a barrier to friendship if they are very, very easily triggered lah. So oftentimes in social skills, we talk a lot about emotional regulation as well, that emotions are normal, it's okay to feel upset and so on. But let's learn some strategies so that we can cope, we can manage better. So I would say emotional regulation skills is number one. The other thing we often work with them on is this thing called perspective taking. Right, because I think when kids are young, it's also part of typical development. When kids are very young, they're very egocentric. They just think about what I want, what I need, what I feel like doing. I don't care about other people. But as they grow, most kids do learn to understand that, hey, different people have different likes and dislikes. I need to compromise. I need to be able to take different views. Like when I'm doing group work, I shouldn't insist on my idea is the best idea, but I'm able to like take turns and to listen to others as well. So I think that's also very important, teaching them perspective taking skills, understanding other people's thoughts and feelings. And maybe a third one I think often comes up is what we call flexibility. So especially when we talk about the kids on the autism spectrum, I think cognitive rigidity is something that we see quite often. So flexibility will refer to things like not always, it doesn't have to be my way all the time. It doesn't always have to be this game played in this way all the time. That friendships are meant to be reciprocal and two-way, and it's about turn-taking. Like flexible thinking, I think it's something that we do focus on as well for friendships.
So we talked about a few of these skills that we feel that would help children actually help better their friendships. So we just also want to understand what kind of therapy activities or like resources are actually involved in building these skills in children who may need the extra support.
Sure. So my belief is that social skills can be taught like a subject, like how you teach math. It's the same thing.
Okay.
How do we teach math, right? Number one, we break down the concept. Okay, so like algebra, very abstract, right? But we break it down and we do explicit teaching. So that's the first thing we do in social skills teaching also. We break down the concept, like making conversations. What is that about? Okay, we break down into I's. I stands for initiate, C stands for continue, E stands for end. How do you end the conversation appropriately and not walk off abruptly, for example? So we do a lot of explicit teaching. And then after that, what will your math teacher do? Like show examples, right? So that is modeling. So that's what we do as well. We show them examples. And in modeling, we usually show examples as well as non-examples of what it looks like and what it does not look like, right? So that's the modeling part. Then after that, what we do, we practice, right? So after you've learned already, it's not just head knowledge, you need to practice. So you practice your math problems, then over time you gain fluency and so on. And the last part, very importantly, is generalization. Because some kids can practice and they do very well in our session, because our session is supportive, it's facilitated, there's an adult around giving you feedback, prompting you. But they need to be able to generalize to the school setting, to their social settings that they're in outside of the clinic. So generalization in math will be like, okay, you know how to do this kind of question, can you apply the concept to like a different kind of question, or the question change a bit, then you cannot apply, right? So in the same way, we need to work with them on generalization as well, which is outside. And that's where the homeschool collaboration is very important because we don't tag along with them to school, right? So there we do have permission to work with the school. We do share some of the skills that we have taught. We ask usually for our mainstream schools, it will be the SEN officers, special educational needs officers, that work with, to maybe observe them at recess, give them some prompting as well. If they could facilitate some kind of buddy system for them to practice these social skills is very helpful. So I think those are the steps, like explicit teaching, modeling, practice, and then real world application or generalization.
Wow, right. I never thought that you could break down something as, I guess, nuanced and almost seemingly complicated like social skills into like teaching math, steps in teaching math.
Very interesting to hear
Definitely,
about the whole process and everything.
Exactly. It does make it a lot like more approachable as well for like people to just like actually say that, okay, yes, I can support or I can actually go through these things, instead of like being like, oh, this is too complicated, like I don't know how to engage with it.
Exactly.
It's a lot more approachable.
We often hear from youth with social challenges, right? I mean, I recently had a client tell me, very, very bright, like this child, IQ within the gifted range. And teenager, so she was telling me, I don't understand why in school they don't teach us how to make friends and things like that. She said, if I was taught, I'm sure I'll be able to master it, just like how I got straight A's for all these subjects,
So cute.
And she made a very astute. So she said, like, people say there's no right or wrong, like in social, it's a lot more fluid. But when I do the wrong thing, I get penalized for it. So if she said something wrong, she did something that's inappropriate, then friends would get upset and so on. So she's like, why is this thing not being taught, So in social, we call it like there are rules, but it's just that these rules are unwritten, for example, you don't spam your class group chat with like 20 random messages kind of thing, then you get kicked out of the group chat.
Right.
Unwritten social rules is something that we aim to make more explicit.
Right.
I do have a point. Do you mind if we skip ahead real quick?
Yeah, of course.
So actually, this is actually very interesting. Something that we actually found a journal article that talked about, or at least discussed why some, at least in the literature, kids with autism tend to have shorter lasting friendships and also lower quality friendships, even though that autistic children want
the same quality of friendships,
they want friendships,
as not typical children.
And not just that, but they also have the same like friendship expectations.
Correct,
and our typically developing or neurotypical children. And something interesting that they found was they looked at something called friendship transgressions, which is basically like what happens or what the reaction what the reactions to friendship violation of an expectation within friendships occurs, and what these typically like neurotypical and neurodivergent kids, autistic kids differ essentially. And something that struck me when you were talking about your experiences was that the article brought up that a lot of the emotional reactions that autistic kids may tend to present might not exactly be indicative of the fact that they want to be aggressive or they want to be angry, but it's more that they don't have maybe don't have the skills or the emotion regulation skills yet to actually translate and communicate their reactions to their friends, and often at times it gets sort of lost in translation because of it. I was wondering as well, like, do you see this sort of trend in your clientele as well, where
they do have complex emotions that they do want to make they want to make known to their peers, but because it's not taught in schools how to do it efficiently, maybe they don't have the explicit teaching yet, and because of that it tends to impede understanding on both ends.
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of times if we think about conflicts, you're talking about conflict between kids on the spectrum, autistic children as well, between them and their neurotypical. What sort of understandings arise, for sure. I tell you, there are so many examples, but the very common ones I can think of is that they're often seen as rude. So this word comes up.
Right.
Yes.
Rude. Because they can be overly direct, and like for example, I can think of a client who would she would correct text messages, her friends' text messages, to say, hey, your grammar is wrong, or this one is not like that, and stuff like that. And that can be frustrating for the kid, right? Who is like texting, hey, what's wrong? You people use short form, and stuff. And she's like, oh, that's not the correct spelling, and so on. Or they can be very blunt, in saying that, hey, this is not nice or something. So I think that's definitely one source of conflict. Recently I had a client as well. It's quite a funny description, because he was telling me how the teacher came to the class, secondary schooler. Teacher came to the class and was looking for this boy. I think this boy, don't know what, ran away. It's boys' school, okay? So this boy was hiding under the table. This boy was from another class, came into his class, hiding under the table. Then the teacher came and looked for this boy and said, hey, where is so-and-so? And then he said, my whole class said, don't know, never see. And then he was very perplexed, right? Because this kid is hiding right under the table over there. So he said that he wanted to tell the teacher, and I think he must have pointed or something.
Oh my goodness.
His peers started grabbing him, like holding his arms back and whatever. So, I mean, luckily he didn't shout out and things like that. He was just like, what's going on? So he wanted to talk about this. Like, he's like, no, I just can't understand, because the boy is right there. The teacher is asking, why are they... To him, it's like there's no agreement to lie. How come everyone is lying? And with our neurotypical kids, boys, right? They're just like, I'm helping my bro kind of situation. And I think for him, it's very much, he's not a bad kid. And in his mind, it's not like, I want to get this guy into trouble and things like that. But to him, it's just like, hey, the teacher is asking a question. We should be answering honestly. So it's that honesty, is the rule-bound thinking and so on. But obviously, any boy in the class looking at him doing that will feel annoyed, upset, what's wrong with you and so on. So I think, so you're absolutely right. It's a lot of this, it's just like different operating systems, and their behavior can be interpreted as rude, not cooperative, or trying to get people into trouble. They are often called girls, right? Always like to tattle and things like that. That does give rise to a lot of the conflicts that we see.
It really doesn't seem like there's any malice.
Oftentimes, there really isn't. Of course, in the minority of situations, there could be also a little bit of anger for some of our clients who have encountered a lot of bullying, for example. But in a way, you don't blame them, because they have been victimized and bullied and have rubbish thrown into their school bags, have their school lunchbox thrown into the dustbin and things like that. They start to feel like, hey, I need to do something. I need to get back at these people. I really don't like them. So for some of them, it does come to a point where, yes, maybe there is a little bit of malice and wanting to get back at that person as well. But I would say, these cases are often, it's not unprovoked. It is due to the dynamics in the group.
Yes, of course. It definitely... I think my malice, I think we may be thinking of not people, definitely kids who maybe want to tease others just for fun, or bully others for fun. There's no even though the response maybe come off as aggressive, they're not trying to spark any hate or cause any harm. Most of the time it's actually reactionary. Funnily enough, the article mentioned that the psychological rigidity that comes with autism may actually make sort of their reliance on immediately using endorsing verbal aggression strategies when it comes to a lot of these conflicts
as more of like, well, yes, something bad has happened, and some kind of like normative response needs to be taken, right? Instead of actually like wanting
Yes.
to, yeah.
That's right. Yeah. So sometimes we do, like when we work with schools, for example, our initial step is usually to give the teacher a feedback form. You would have seen our feedback
Yes.
form, just to gather some initial feedback before we have conversations with the teachers. And sometimes we do see that the teachers would use words like what you mentioned, child is aggressive, child is violent, child is, so on, words like that, which are very, very loaded words, right? But when we have conversation with them, when we analyze the behaviors, we realize that oftentimes it could be a loss of control. For example, that the child was maybe called names or something, and then it started lashing out. So, and then while lashing out, this kid walked past and then maybe he hit the child. But it wasn't sort of intentional, like I'm trying to hurt you, I'm trying to hit you, but it was in that moment. So these things do happen. And because of that, not that they're right, but I'm saying that they can be labeled as violent, aggressive, without any intention to hurt other people.
Right. So, while I was talking about how neurotypical youth actually deal with conflict and all that, another strategy that they use would be like avoidance, right? So the previous research shows that neurotypical youth tend to exhibit avoidance behaviors as a strategy for dealing with conflict, but this has mainly shown in this relation to how familiar these children are to the person they may have these tensions with. So to avoid making gross assumptions about avoidance behaviors, do you think avoidance behaviors are also a key concern for the neurodivergent population at whole?
Yes, I think it cuts across. I think definitely. To some extent, avoidance is a bit like human nature, like when it feels uncomfortable, something feels difficult or overwhelming, sometimes we do avoid it. And then, some of us, we force ourselves to face up to it later, but some might continue to sweep issues under the carpet. And I think, that's very common. So it's not specific to only neurotypical or only neurodivergent.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, like avoidance is very regular behavior that we see, right? But do you think there are actually like instances where this may be actually beneficial for the youth?
And perhaps maybe not just avoidant, but instances when they sort of take a step back.
Yeah.
Like
when they realize that the
It's getting a
conflict
bit
is
much. Just
because something interesting that that we also read, and this is a completely different study, is that oftentimes was it friends who are in synchrony?
Oh, the SAA.
Yes.
Cortisol.
Yeah. So when friends have like a lot of synchrony in both their sort of physiological and also their emotional states, typically it results in very poor sort of de-escalation of conflicts, because like one tries to talk more, and then because they're synced up, the other one will talk more, and then everyone's like sort of like everything's boiling up to the surface. So are there instances when do you tell the kids that you work with that maybe sometimes it's good to recognize your state and maybe step back and like reevaluate or label your thoughts and emotions?
Yes, for sure. I think timing is important, and because the population we work with often do have difficulties regulating their emotions, we often do say, take a pause, right? Let's regroup, let's process it first, let's have a plan, let's practice. So you want to resolve this conflict with someone, what do you say? They might not know what to say, it might come across differently. So sometimes taking a pause can help them when they're calm, can help them to actually reflect back and to take perspective and to have a better understanding of actually what caused this conflict. Because there's an issue sometimes, there is a conflict, they know someone is upset with them, but they may not know what they did. So I think avoidance, we're only concerned if it's quite an entrenched like coping mechanism, whatever, they just keep avoiding, they don't want to. And this happens where the child, sometimes parents will tell us, we want to teach him, we're trying to reflect, hey, what happened yesterday? Let's talk about how we can manage it better next time. They're like, no, what happened yesterday? They just don't want to revisit, because when they revisit situations, it can dredge up again the kind of difficult emotions. A lot of our kids have a lot of trouble dealing with shame, right? So they try to the shame, and sometimes it comes across as blaming other people. No, it's not my fault. My friend started it first. Oh, they all do this, this.
Right.
And then and then teachers get upset. It's like they're not taking responsibility. They refuse to apologize. But sometimes that can stem from this avoidance of shame.
Right.
You know,
right.
they don't want
Yeah.
to deal with the shame and the guilt and all the difficult emotions that come with it. So to them, it's just like avoid. So that's something
Yeah.
that we sort of want to be able to process and work through with them. But what you're saying is more like temporary avoidance but then later coming back to it. I would say that definitely can be helpful, especially if they're feeling very dysregulated and they don't have a plan in mind of how I'm going to do this.
Yes, of course. I think we will wrap up with maybe like 2 more points because we're already at the 30-minute mark.
Sure.
So, have you seen any like common expectations or beliefs that children with ASD may have about friendships before making the first step to get to know others, and like what have they been, if any?
Yes. So I think this relates to kind of the cognitive rigidity that we talk about. Like some of them do come in with very, very strong beliefs, and we do see a bit of black and white thinking that we need to address. So I would say one very common one is categorizing people in very black and white ways, like this person is good, this person is bad. This teacher is good, this teacher is bad. For example, this person is my friend, this person is not my friend. So they may not be thinking of friendship in terms of something that develops over time and can deepen and can either get stronger or weaker and so on. But they might come in with a bit of a thinking. So we do face that sometimes, hey, why don't you talk to this person? No, this person is not my friend because I've never talked to that person before. So it's a bit of a circular argument. Sometimes we do see a bit of generalization. Like I said, because of kids on the spectrum, sometimes due to their behaviors, they can get bullied or teased. Usually it's not like the whole class ganging up against them. There might be, some kids who are more prone to doing that. But some of them do then generalize it. Like, nobody likes me, everybody hates me in the class, and so on. So I feel that kind of expectation or belief can also be a barrier when they feel like nobody wants to be my friend. And sometimes for us, it's just about convincing them that there are people out there,
of course.
who might be willing to be your friend, but they have kind of convinced themselves otherwise. So kind of overgeneralization. I think we also see some strong beliefs in terms of like, this person must agree with me kind of thing, must like what I like, and so on.
Right.
Well, we do acknowledge that there is some grain of truth in that. Maybe among friends, I suppose it's easier when you have some sort of a shared interest,
Yes.
Then you can talk about it. It becomes like an easy conversational topic. But again, that can be carried to extremes sometimes. Like, oh, but I like Pokemon. This person plays Minecraft, so we are different and we cannot be friends, and so on. That thing about agreeing to disagree can be a challenge sometimes, where they don't agree with me, or we're different, we cannot be friends.
Right.
So those are the common, I would say, like rigid beliefs that we deal with.
Okay. Thank you very much for sharing that, actually. That was really insightful. I think we have also talked a lot about, what are the struggles of the children and the neurodivergent youth as well, but I think I kind of want to put almost the onus on our neurotypical peers as well. Like, do you think that there are any like what kinds of advice or maybe additional considerations do you think we could provide our neurotypical children to maybe probably help improve their understanding of how their peers on the spectrum or their peers who are neurodivergent may actually react towards conflict and perhaps work towards resolution? We say this because one of the implications in the research was this idea that neurodivergent children tend to see betrayal or some forms of lying as a very, very overt transgression of their friendship expectations, whereas we know that sometimes we may lie on our friends' behalf to like save face for them, and there are some things that we do that are maybe
technically wrong in like performing actual white lies, but we actually
Right.
do it for the benefit of others, in a very moral sense of making sure that they're fine, and maybe we don't disclose like secrets because of it, even though we trust people and or not. So are there any additional considerations that could maybe help our typically developing children, like understand better?
So I think that's an important point, because a lot of times we focus a lot on our kids with ASD, right? You got to get better, you got to be more sensitive to other people's feelings and so on. And so I feel that, I mean, I agree with that yes, these are skills that, like we said, it can be built, but the responsibility cannot be fully on them as well, right? Like,
100%,
you must
Yes,
change, you must act normal, you must fit in.
Yes.
So I feel like it is both ways. At the same time, I also think that depending on the age of the neurotypical child,
Right.
it can also be a bit too much to expect them to like accommodate
Yes.
and just tolerate,
Yes.
because they are kids too, and they also have feelings, they also feel hurt, right?
Yes.
So what I feel that is both ways. I think we also have to be realistic about depending on the age, what the
Yes.
child can do lah. So in terms of advice for them, earlier we talked about how a lot of their behaviors are actually misunderstood.
Yes.
So I would say maybe the first thing is maybe don't take it personally, right? Don't assume negative intention, like the
Right.
fact that the boy was pointing at you is not that he wanted to get you in trouble, but what other what else could be going on for
Right.
this. So maybe it's kind of giving the benefit of the doubt, and I would say tell them, okay, when maybe the situation is over, everyone is calm, tell them, because the most common thing we hear is that they said, oh, I had this friend, I thought things were going well, suddenly they don't talk to me anymore. I have no idea what happened. Sometimes you really don't know that maybe what they said was hurtful or what they did was inappropriate. And I feel that by just cutting off the friendship and not talking about it, you're also not helping that person. So
Yes.
so the second thing I would say is maybe don't be afraid to tell them, because oftentimes there's really no intention to cause that hurt or harm to you, and knowing actually helps them to get better at it and to
Right.
improve. Because I think the worst thing is when they don't know what happened and they really have no idea. So I had a client before who said, if only they will tell me, I will try to change. Because they really, really want to have friends. So I would say, tell them, and when you tell them also, maybe say things directly and clearly lah. Try to avoid, a lot of hints, hinting,
Right.
Right.
that kind of thing. Just tell them as it is lah. I'm sure, so I believe that we can be honest and respectful
Yes.
at the same time without insulting that person. So using I statements, for example, when you said this, it made me feel hurt.
Yes.
I felt that you were not really valuing our friendship, something like that, like show perspective with that person. And I guess the last thing I would say is maybe hold peace talks lah, right?
Yes.
So if
Right,
emotions
right.
are very high, so again, because our clients often have a lot of dysregulation and so on, it might be good to let a bit of time pass it, let things settle down a little bit, and then approach a person, hey, you want to talk about it, in a non-confrontational way. So when we teach our clients conflict resolution skills, we often tell them find the right time and space. Don't do it publicly. Don't walk to that person like, hey, why that day you do, in front of it.
Right.
So things like that lah. Find a private moment where maybe you all can talk things through in a calm manner, and be open lah to hear that person's perspective as well.
Right.
Right. So maybe if I could sort of boil all everything that you just mentioned down, maybe first one being, don't take for granted the fact that just because someone else has communication issues, we don't have communication issues as well, because yes, open and honest communication and being clear about the way we feel about each other will definitely only help us understand each other better in general, but especially in the case of sort of interacting with our autistic youth, meeting them at their level, very much so, communicating in them in a way that they would understand, and not just always thinking about the way we are trying to get our thoughts across,
Right.
would be very helpful. And of course, being open to our experiences with our autistic peers and friends.
And I think that applies actually to everyone, not just all
Yes.
conflict. Don't be too quick to judge lah.
Yes,
Right?
yes.
Other
Yeah.
reasons, the person might be having a bad day, the person might have misinterpreted you in
Right,
some
right.
ways. too quick to judge, maybe. Yeah.
Right. Okay. I think that
Yeah.
That's all?
I think that's we are completely done with the main interview section. Actually, let me ask a fun question. I left in like halfway through last year. So how often do you guys get kids doing 6-7 now?
A lot. Yes. Correct. Yeah. So they do. And the funny thing is, in the IQ test, there's an item where we have to say 6-7. So there is like a working memory, so no choice, right? Because of standardization procedure.
Yes.
So there was a sequence of digits that we have to read to them.
Oh no.
And then some of them will stay away, start doing it, and then they get distracted and so on.
That's so endearing.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
I think this is a really not great point to end our podcast on.
Yes.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to talk with us, and we genuinely
We're so
Yeah.
thank you so much, and we're so appreciative.
Okay.
Yes, thank you so
Take
much.
care. Thank you to Dr. Yang.
All right.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to our Buffalove podcast episode on friendships. And thank you once again to Dr. Yang for joining our discussion. If you're interested in learning other topics within the psychology of close relationships, check out Buffalove's other podcast episodes on our website. Take care, everyone.